Welcome to our podcast, The Movement Odyssey, a collection of journeys through dance.
And today we are joined by the amazing Marc Spaulding.
All right, excited to be here with you.
Can you give us like a little mini bio?
Of course. I am originally from Bowie, Maryland, so right outside of D.C. And so I began my training in D.C. at Duke Ellington School of the Arts, Performing Arts School in D.C. And, from there I went to UArts, University of the Arts in Philadelphia. And then from there I moved to New York right out after school, started dancing with Donald Byrd, a contemporary modern company. And then I went back to Philadelphia and danced with Philadenko, which is a historically black modern dance company. They are interested in preserving works of African Americans. And then from there I went back to New York. So I went back and forth on the East Coast for a while, and I freelanced and I did some musical theater, Broadway. And then I found my way to Los Angeles where I started doing commercial work, TV and film, specifically as a dancer. And then, I started focusing more on choreography and teaching, and kind of that transition just kind of happened naturally, where I just started focusing more on choreography and teaching. And I was like, oh, well, that's what I want to do. And then I went to grad school in 2019, kind of through the pandemic, which was pretty interesting. Mm-hmm. And then got the job here. So then I moved cross country back to the East Coast from California in 2021.
So I looked at your bio and I saw that you started dancing in like high school. And while that's not like a late start to dance, but I think like in the dance world, like considering when most of us started at like 3 and 2, like that would be what we consider a late start. And I just want to know what it was like to shift into an art school. And do you think that environment contributed to your initial unsureness of if dance was the path for you, like starting so late? What do you think it was a little more of like a struggle for you to understand that like this is what I was meant to do?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think, especially during the time that I was coming up as a youth, as a younger kid, I'd say in middle school, elementary, dancing, especially during that time, you're talking about, late 80s and 90s or early 90s, because of music videos, dancing at school dances, dancing with my friends on the blacktop, dancing was just a part of the culture, dancing at family reunions.
Yeah.
I just danced. It wasn't like, it was just like we danced as a form of expression, and especially that like early wave of hip hop culture, which I was very inspired by. So I just danced. So it wasn't something I thought about. And then in high school, when my path kind of went towards a more traditional training background or experience, it definitely was a culture shock for me. Being like, what? You want me to put leotard and tights on? What's it? It was just very kind of cliche. Boy that played basketball comes in and has to, is doing sautés in his football pads. Yeah, exactly. It's a whole cliche dance movie. So that was my initial experience.
Yeah.
I'm at the bar and I'm like, what is going on? The ballet bar. And so, yeah, it was a thing of where I was unsure. I was like, is this what I really should be doing or want to be doing? And I think over time, as I started to get better and I started to gain more self-confidence as a result, and then I started developing a really real passion for it, but I didn't know how to express that. And so it was definitely a hard thing to figure out psychologically and emotionally. Well, is this what I want to do? Should I be doing it? You kind of get into, roles of how males are supposed to carry themselves. What are they supposed to be doing? What types of activities? So it was a whole lot of things that I was trying to process.
Yeah. I
You know.
also think, like, because I read that your mother put you in dance and
She did.
kind of pushed you into that. So, like, even for me, like, I wasn't like, oh, I want to dance. My mom just put me in it. So it's kind of like you're used to the idea of like, oh, I'm here to be here. And it's kind of like you're trying to figure out when that switch is like, oh, I want to be here. This is what I want to do. And like to make that leap into your career is kind of like a little mind game.
Absolutely, yeah. I took a break. So my performing arts high school that I went to, shout out to Duke Ellington, it was very intense, and so we were there. You know, I was there like 8 o'clock in the morning for academics, and then dance in the afternoon, and then rehearsals until like 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night. And then because I was in the city, and then I lived in the suburbs, so then I would catch the train home, so I'm not getting home until like 11 o'clock at night, you know. So it was a lot. So I was burnt out, you know, when I graduated, and I took a year off of dance. I went to FAMU my freshman year.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, historically black university, and then, you know, had fun.
Well, I mean, also when you did that for all your high school career, like,
And then I was like, all right,
At a different bar.
Yeah,
For a little bit.
you're right.
well, I mean, that was all of your high school where you were doing that, so you don't
Yeah.
get the football games, you don't get
Yeah.
the fun, and so it's like
Yeah.
kind of want to
The
go a
part.
little crazy when you get
Exactly.
to college. Yeah.
So I had to get that out of my system, and then I transferred to UArts my sophomore year, and then I was like, boom, dance.
You're like,
That's
this
all I
is
want to
it.
do. Yeah.
Interesting. And then so after UArts, you went directly into a company after getting your BFA. Can you like explain that experience and that like internal shift of just like, I guess the same struggles that you fought with confidence and accountability when you first started dance?
Oh yeah. So that was the next level of it. So, you know, in college, you know, I was feeling myself, and it was like I danced a lot, and I was one of those dancers that was, you know, fortunate enough to be cast in a lot of things, and so I had this, you know, confidence, and, you know, a little. I think I was definitely overconfident graduating college, and then I definitely got, you know, put in my place, you know, when I first got to New York, and I got into a company right away, right out of college. And I was dancing with grown adults. You know, I was dancing with grown. I was the youngest in the company, so I was dancing. It was a smaller company, so there was between 8 to 10 dancers, but everyone was grown. A lot of them had families already. They were grown. So like I just graduated in college, and I'm like, I had to really learn how to work again, you know, because it was different how I was working in college versus, you know, working with these grown men and women. And that definitely was a test of, I guess, my self-confidence, and, you know, could I really do this? And so, yeah, it was definitely that first year was definitely a learning experience, learning how to work, really how to work. It wasn't physically the movement, the choreography. It was my mentality.
Think about it, and probably like the self-discipline, because like even though we're at college, like I still think, like I notice things like in the way we're taught where it's still like a kind of a guiding hand. And so it's just kind of like, I feel like going straight into that professional world, you kind of have to figure out how to like push yourself, because it's like those little corrections that you get in class, like they won't tell you anymore. They'll just watch you be bad, and then like, all right, we won't be using you next year.
You won't
like,
be getting booked, yeah.
Yeah. So that's definitely true. It's spot on. Like, you know, they're expecting you to take more ownership of, you know, your craft and how you're working. And how you go about the work. You know, no one's gonna be standing over you saying, learn your music. You know, if you're learning an older repertory piece, here's the video footage. No one's gonna be, oh, did you learn Lydia Jasmine? Did you study on your own? Did you know that part? If you don't come to rehearsal and you don't know that material, then you won't be cast. So they'll bring someone in.
Yeah. I mean, did you find being younger that you faced judgment and like just initial, I guess, separation from the rest of the company since they were at such a different place?
Like a little underdog.
Yes, definitely. Well, I definitely had to kind of prove myself where I felt like I had to prove myself. They were supportive of me, yes, but I also had to learn how to work, and I had to show them that I knew how to work for them to like fully trust me.
Yeah.
Because it also too, Donald Byrd's motto, especially at that time, because I danced in his last company in New York. He is now the artistic director of Spectrum, or has been the artistic director of Spectrum Dance in Seattle. But the philosophy was in his company in New York was that it's a company of soloists. So there was a lot of duet work, or a lot of even solos in the material. We had ensemble pieces, but there were a lot of solos and duets, so you had to really carry a lot of weight. And that was definitely a big test. I'm grateful for that experience, though, because I learned how to work.
Yeah.
Yeah. And at your 3 years, like, you had 3 years at Philadelphia, right?
Yes.
And then you went to Hairspray, right?
Well, so after I danced with Philadelphia, then I went back to New York, and then I started freelancing, and then I auditioned for Hairspray when I was living in New York.
I was trying to figure out where that
fit in.
that
what
shift
happened.
came in, because I was like, you were doing successful. You were at Philadelphia. You were young, so it's kind of like, how?
But I ran into I was really fortunate in the fact that I danced right away out of school. I got a job right away. And so for the first 4 years I was working consistently, because I had 2 companies right away. But then after that, that's when I moved back to New York. I ran into the wall. That's when I ran into the wall. And then I went back, truthfully, I went back to New York because I had auditioned for Ailey the year before, and I did really well. I made it all the way to the end of the audition. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna get it next year. I can feel it. And I went back and I didn't get it, and I was devastated. And so then I was back in New York, and I was like, okay, now what? Because that was the only other company that I wanted to dance for. And I was like, okay, so that didn't happen. So then I started freelancing, and kind of like working with different choreographers, which was great, but the work was inconsistent, and it was a struggle. It was a struggle. And then then I was like, well, then I started, I don't know, I started, because in New York there's so much happening. There's Broadway, there's freelance work, there's companies. So I remember seeing a couple shows, Broadway shows, and I had an older kind of like mentor figure that was in Fosse at the time, and I went to go see him perform in Fosse, and I saw some other older dancers that I knew that were in various other shows, and I was like, oh wow, maybe I can, maybe musical theater or maybe commercial work. That kind of crossed my mind, and so that's where kind of I think that desire to start exploring those other avenues.
Just like redefining your goals.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I didn't know that you moved and then that brought Hairspray. I thought it was like the opposite. So during that time period, the little 2-year period, do you think shifting your goals and trying out new things helped you kind of maintain your self-confidence in your career? Because I feel like even dancers here, like if we don't get cast, we're like, I suck. So I can't imagine
And that's just in one
being
semester,
a professional and like struggling to figure out like your dream company, you didn't make it. Like, how did you maintain that confidence in yourself and your career to keep going?
Oh yeah. So I think this is also too, part of it is me being resilient, and what I credit my mentors and my early training at Duke Ellington for, it was that there was and it was a different time, and we can always talk about I always talk with you all about that in class. We always talk about the different generations and the pros and cons of what you all are experienced to, which I think like on a positive side, where things are a lot more nurturing or there's more conversation. People are more open to having those conversations about how you work and just how we treat each other in the space and all of that. So that's great. I think the flip side for me, even though the way that the information and way you were taught was a lot more authoritarian, but it also kind of built a certain resiliency,
like a thick skin.
yeah, that I was able to rely on that when I ran into that those hard moments where I was like, no, I'm going to work through this because that's what I've been taught to do and work through that. And then also I think truthfully, I played a lot of sports growing up. And so I think one thing that sports teaches you is how to deliver in high pressured moments. That you think about the game is running out. What are you going to do when the stakes are high? This is your last at bat. The clock is running down. So I learned some of those valuable lessons I learned from playing youth sports, also being being naturally competitive too. I was like, no, I'm gonna turn this around. I got it. So all of that, I was having those conversations, but don't get it twisted. It was definitely humbling. I had moments where it's like, man, I'm not determined not to go back home.
No, I was going to say that's a lot of strength because I feel like in that moment, hopefully I'd have a little more strength, but I just can imagine myself panicking, all right, dance isn't for me. I'm bad at it. 100%. I'm not meant for it. But it's a lot of strength to kind of just have that inner, no, I know this is what I'm supposed to be doing and to stick with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I just have a general question about, you've probably heard this in your classes. I guarantee you've asked this, but do you have a favorite commercial project that you've worked on?
Favorite commercial project? Probably, I would say...
My Girls in Day?
I was going to say it. That's what we were waiting for.
The Euphoria gig was a lot of fun. That was great. I mean, the process was Ryan, working with choreographer Ryan Heffington, who choreographed a lot of abstract. He choreographs a lot of commercial work, but it's a lot of abstract stuff. He choreographs all of Euphoria stuff.
Oh, I want to watch more of his work.
Yeah,
I know.
But a lot of his stuff, he's done some film and TV stuff, but it's very abstract. Definitely out of the box, especially for commercial projects. There's nothing kind of cliche or status quo with anything that he's choreographing and creating. It's out there. So, but he was very low key. The process was great. We shot through the night. So I think we didn't finish. We didn't wrap. They call wrap, when we finish. We didn't wrap until 4 a.m.
Ooh.
So I was driving home as the sun was coming up. It's 5. I had been dancing all night.
And that was pretty recent, right? I mean,
it was in 2000. What was that? 2019 or 20?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oof.
So because it was right. Actually, I shot it. I think I was in grad school, and it was right before I got into the thick of things in grad school. I think it was one of my last. Was that my last commercial gig? I think no, that wasn't. But it was one of my last commercial gigs. Yeah, that was fun. But I would definitely say probably Hairspray.
Hairspray.
Yeah. That's because we shot longer. It was for 6 months. So I lived in Canada for 6 months, and yeah, we just had so much fun. And
also a longer gig. I feel a lot of commercial work, you don't get to sit with the work and kind of get into and have that bonding experience with your cast. But I was to do Hairspray where it's a nice
I made more money.
Right.
There you go.
There you go.
Still making money.
Still making money.
Wait, yeah, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, so I still get residual checks from that. So
Pitching.
Whatever they're doing next.
I know.
Girls, I got you.
So watch Hairspray. Contribute
It's
to
on
my
YouTube,
residual checks.
free with ads. Watch it. But yeah. But you met Zendaya?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, back to that.
So back to Euphoria.
Sorry.
Back to Zendaya.
Regardless of your favorite.
Right.
Yeah, anyway.
No, it's so funny story about Zendaya is so we were on set and it was in between. We were rehearsing. We were on set, which was like we shot it on a ranch, and so they built like the little town that where she supposedly lived in. So we're on set and we're in between, and I was just stretching, just sit down and stretching, and we were all kind of in like close proximity together, and then she just sat down next to me, and she was like, "Oh, you're a dancer."
No,
I'd literally cry.
I would take that to heart. Like I would tell
Yeah?
everyone that
And
story.
then I start
I
laughing.
get that tattooed on me. You're a dancer.
You're a dancer.
Dashes and dance.
Just because just like the mentality I think a lot of times is different from concert dance to commercial dance. A lot of times it's really it's product driven, and it's about hitting your mark and being where you're supposed to be and being like precise and on it. But the movement, I would say from a movement standpoint, it just requires it's a different type of mentality and work. And so, but me coming from like performing arts and conservatory background into the first part of my career being in doing company work, I was, I warm up before I did that. That's kind of like ingrained in me. So even though that I'm doing commercial work, I still had
like a
that.
concert.
I'm gonna stretch.
structure
of it,
And
yeah.
so a lot of times they're looking at me like, why is
Like, hey, you can go
Why
ahead
is
and
he in
pull
a
your
lunge?
hamstring.
right?
I also feel like commercial dance also kind of has this like check boxy like just energy to it where it's like, okay, it doesn't matter if you really know what's going on as long as you hit your pose, like kind of how you were saying. So I don't know, like I feel like commercial dance could be so much more like if you could honestly bring that concert mindset into it. Like, yeah, of course there's like the Super Bowl halftime show where I know they stretched. I know they were running it. I know they were like in their headspace, but like I feel like commercial just now kind of has this energy of where it's like, oh, it doesn't really matter what we're doing until they say like action and let's get it. And like,
Well, I just think that a lot of the when you're doing, like I said, when you're doing commercial work, it really, like, some people, it's so interesting to have the conversation where, and it goes both ways. I know a lot of commercial dancers that don't like performing on stage because they feel a little bit vulnerable performing in front of a live audience where anything can go wrong and certain things. And then there's people I know, like concert dancers, that are scared to death of dancing in front of a camera because everything is finite. It's the camera captures everything.
Oh yeah.
So they see the most, they see the smallest error, and it's really about precision. And so I feel like, I know even for me, like getting used to like dancing on camera, especially at first it was nerve-wracking because even the way I moved, I didn't grow up. I grew up doing, kind of conservatory and concert dance, conservatory performing arts training, which is different than say studio or drill team or precision dancing where you're really practicing on being precise. There was more breath and air in certain times, so that I get certain notes like I'm living a little bit too long, like I'm there, but there's a little extra breath, and they're like, no, bro, it's
Keep going.
here and go. Like, Rockette, you need to be
we're hitting this
there,
on eight.
not here.
Not 8 and.
Not 8 and, but 8. So, it was just, you got to rewire. I had to rewire my mind. Like, nope, got to be right there in the middle, not like breathing and living.
No room for that.
Right.
Nope.
Okay. So at what point in your career did you feel like confident enough in your built knowledge and repertoire to like start teaching?
Okay,
Especially at a
Jazz.
collegiate level.
At a collegiate level. I think, so after, like, when I was in Los Angeles and the last few years I was auditioning, I also started teaching at a conservatory. And it's a smaller college conservatory in LA. And so that gave me really my first kind of like taste of, I had done a few guest artist classes as a company dancer over the years. But that's different because it's a one-off, and you're just when companies come to different cities, like we've had residencies, right, where complexions or whatever company has come, and they, I think Kyle, when AIM's company came, was that last year?
Yeah.
Some of their company members did like a master class or guest artist class. I did stuff like that, but that's just a one-off. That's completely different. But I think when I started working with this smaller college conservatory in LA, it gave me a small insight into, what that type of teaching was about, and what it required. And I felt confident because, I was taking all of my real world dance experience into the studio with me. Yeah. And then once I realized that I wanted to do this, I wanted to dance, or I wanted to maybe work at a more, I'd say more,
like prestigious,
prestigious university, I decided that, I'm going to go to grad school. Because also I wanted to work, I wanted to be able to kind of have that laboratory experience of just kind of refining my choreography. And so from there, in grad school, I took pedagogy, and we're learning, different techniques and practices of how to run a classroom or guide students in a classroom. And you're working on teacher-student practice and relationships and all the things that come with teaching at a university. So, in grad school, I was doing student teaching, grad teaching. So that gave me even more experience of, how do I guide students on a collegiate level. And so, so after my 2 years in grad school, I've married that with my in-field experience. And, I'm still, growing because I'm still a very young teacher, in terms of, professor or what have you. So, I'm still I'm still adjusting, I'm still in the beginning stages. I guess I'm still an infant, teacher. I don't know, from that standpoint.
Did you always want to teach, or did you just kind of walk into dance as wanting to perform, basically, until your body gave out?
Oh, I think that for me, it was a natural progression. It wasn't something I planned. Like, I was performing, and then much like my performance career, where I allowed myself to stay open to going down different pathways, and then I became more passionate about, choreographing and teaching. That kind of evolved naturally. It wasn't something I'm going to do that. It was just something that I felt I gravitated towards. I'm very big on instinct, and that's how I teach a lot too. Like, as you all both have been in my class, sometimes I'll have I have stuff planned, but I leave it open enough so that I can be spontaneous. Because sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm gonna do that because that's what I'm feeling, and that's what I'm feeling from the students in the moment. And then I'm able to switch course, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna do that. And so I teach from a very instinctual and spontaneous place a lot of times.
I think there's a lot of power in like being open, just in general in your life, because like you were saying, like being open allowed you to see more opportunities for yourself, or just even like, because I've had teachers where like, yeah, I do love a little schedule and like logging in and seeing everything laid out, but it is sometimes like when we walk in that room on that day, like, does this plan make sense? And they'll make us stick to it no matter what. And it's just kind of like, I think being open, like, it just takes away the like drastic like black or white of things, and it kind of just gives you a lot of room to like have happiness with your decisions, or just like freedom and like more beautiful like creative work to come out, just like in general, like whether you're like working in life or just like working in a classroom. Like, I feel like not indecisiveness, but like not being so drastic in your opinions or decisions kind of do allow you room for growth.
Well, especially like anything creative, you need to have that room, or else it hinders just a lot of potential, I think, for both like students and teachers. So like that room just needs to exist for it to be productive, I think. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. I agree.
Ooh.
Oh,
This
here's
one's
the
a
next
little
one.
tea.
Not like
Here we
tea.
go.
Only if you make it tea.
Were there any teachers in your career path that you feel initially may have negatively or not at all impacted your career? And if so, how did you change your perspective to gain something from their teaching?
You don't have to name
Here we
names
go,
if you
here we
don't
go.
need to, though. That's the thing.
Such and such.
It's a little
Who's listening to this podcast? So here's my and I firmly believe this, and I this was not a popular opinion. I shared this in grad school. So in my grad school cohort, we would have, a lot of times the classes, we would have these open conversations and as a part of our pedagogy class, and we would talk about authoritarian teaching and different practices and choreographers. And so I've worked with a lot of people, from as like teachers, artist teachers, choreographers. I've worked with a lot of people in the dance world. And I would say, honestly, I'm thankful for all of those experiences, especially the hard, difficult experiences, because it taught me so much. There was so much valuable information that I learned, especially now being in the classroom and working with you all. And not only that, but even in my personal life when I run into obstacles and things, I'm very thankful for those difficult moments. I think some of the most challenging, or some of the teachers or choreographers that I worked with that had challenging or different, quotation air quotes, difficult or challenging personalities, I learned the most from those people.
Mm-hmm. Teaches you how to deal with conflict.
Exactly.
Oh yeah, and under pressure too.
And under pressure, So I'm very thankful for all the experiences. I don't wish luckily I didn't have, experiences that I felt went too far, across the line. Because I know people that have those stories, and so I want to be respectful of those people. Yeah. But I personally, I wouldn't. I've had people call me things out of my name, or just do a lot of that type of stuff. But nothing that went to the point where I felt it was devastating. Yeah. So I'm very thankful for
anything you gained from it.
No, so I'm very thankful for all of the experiences
That's good to hear. Yeah.
Did that take some time though? Like, did it take
just to get over? I guess.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I definitely took some stuff personal, and I think it took me a while to say, mature, go away, go into the world, and then later on reflect on that later. So yeah, I'm not going to say that, oh yeah, I just understood it right away at 19 when that person called me out of my name. No, it took me years to deal with that, but I think it never, even when I was dealing with it, it never stopped me from being passionate about dance. Like I said, as I got older, then I understood. I was like, okay, what I was told, dealing with, someone that was difficult to work with, the person said to me, don't make it personal, or don't make it about you. So as I got older, what I was able to kind of like piece together, and what that person didn't say was also, because you never know what they're going through. So just because they're going through something in their lives doesn't mean that you have to take it personal.
Or like it's any reflection of you.
Or a reflection of me. No, it's more of a reflection on them.
Oh, yeah. In their life.
Yeah.
So I think if you're in those situations, you have to I think I always make it about the work. When you're in the studio, I make it about the work. So if someone's having a rough day, of course they're going to bring it into the studio. There's no way not to do that. But it's how you have a choice in how you deal with that. Yeah. If you make it personal, then it's just going to feel personal.
Negative, yeah. Because even as like a sophomore, like and we're sophomores out of 4 years, and I look back to freshman year, and I'm like, ooh,
Ooh.
like okay,
Little
like lots of
sensitive,
things
yeah.
look a little different. I'm like,
Yeah.
all right, we've grown, we've matured. I also think going to school with like other arts people, because I feel like I grew up in like the suburbs, and like while there was dance,
Oh yeah,
but like
I went to public school. I didn't go to performing arts school.
yeah,
No,
I didn't
went
go to performing
no.
arts. We were like the weird ones. Like, and so it's like just coming here, there's like
Yeah.
a bunch of us, and I'm sorry, we're all just as emotional. We're
Oh,
all
yeah.
just as like we are like not the same, but it's like we used to
We're the
like,
same
be one
breed.
of us, in,
Yeah.
like a bunch of like 100,
Yeah.
and now there's like all of us just surrounded. Like, how is it going to like? Did you feel that in art school? Like just being surrounded by artists and be like, oh, we're all artists. Like,
Well, yes, it was. I was thinking, yeah, there was definitely everyone's dancing and singing and voguing down the hallway, and, on roller skates. People's hairs are dyed every color, So you definitely like going to performing arts. High school was definitely like an easy transition into a
college.
conservatory college. Because you're like, oh, I just did this for 4 years.
Yeah.
We're just a little bit older.
yeah, that was a shocker. But
It definitely was.
I guess our like last like official question was like any current like projects you got in the works or like anything like
Or
you wanna
ideas
share,
of things in the
ideas?
future, near future, I guess.
Yeah, I think right now, for me, what I'm doing now is just I am packaging my choreography and just working on residencies and submissions for choreographic projects.
Oh, that's exciting.
And so that's, especially in addition to my teaching, that's what I'm working on. So those are the things
That's
that
exciting. And then
working on.
in terms of like Point Park, how do you see your future at this school in terms of teaching? I know it's like a, and you don't have to be as honest as you.
Oh no, I mean, I don't know. We'll see. I think that I'm open and I'm here and I'm committed to what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So, it goes both ways.
Yeah.
Yep. Hey, it sure does.
So we'll see how that materializes.
Yeah. I feel like that's a good way to leave off, honestly. That's a good.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you,
had
Mark.
a
It was
great
awesome
time,
having you.
yeah.
Yeah, and best of luck. Listen to their podcast.
Thanks. If you have any jingle
Oh, yeah.
suggestions, right now would be the
Like a little
time.
5, 6, 7, 8.
Go, Mark.
Let's see. 5, 6, 7, 8. It's Jasmine
Hey.
and Lydia.
Hey.
Yeah.
We were podcasting.
Hey.
That's all I got.
I love it.